Picture this. It's July 1944. A brilliant, highly decorated German general is standing in a stone abbey in Normandy. He's absolutely certain he's safe, protected not just by his elite troops, but by the very laws of physics. But he's wrong, because an enemy hiding just over the horizon is about to bend those laws. And in just 60 seconds, they're going to shatter his entire world.
So that's the big question, right? This is the problem the Allies are facing. How do you possibly defeat an opponent who has checked every manual, consulted every chart, and concluded that he is, quite literally, untouchable? What's the move?
Well, you don't play by his rules. You learn how to bend them. Not with some new superweapon, but with a brilliant and frankly brutal trick that would completely change the game.
Okay, so let's meet the man at the center of this story. This is SS Brigade Führer Kurt Meyer. And get this, he's only 33 years old, the youngest divisional commander in the entire German military. He's a tactical genius, totally battle-hardened, and right now in July 1944, he's the guy in charge of holding the critical city of Caen, and he thinks he has the perfect plan.
It all came down to some simple math. See, Meyer positioned his top-tier 12th SS Panzer Division a full 15 miles inland. Now, why that specific number? Because military doctrine, every artillery manual out there, said the biggest Allied naval guns had a max range of about 12 miles. That extra 3 miles, he believed, was his sanctuary, a literal kill zone where it was physically impossible for those guns to touch him.
And you know, he had every reason to be this confident. It wasn't just about the distance. He commanded the fanatical Hitler-Jugend division. He had these superior Panther and Tiger tanks that could knock out Allied armor from over a mile away. Plus, he was using Normandy's thick hedgerows, the bocage, as perfect natural fortresses. He felt completely invincible.
And this just nails his mindset, doesn't it? This wasn't just arrogance. It was a conclusion based on all the data he had. He was getting ready to ambush the British advance, totally convinced they had no answer for his perfectly laid trap. He was about to get a very harsh lesson that sometimes the enemy just doesn't play by the book. So while Meyer is sitting there so sure of himself in his fortress, there's a threat lurking just off the coast. An odd, kind of lopsided-looking ship held the key to breaking this whole thing open. The HMS Rodney.
The Rodney was an absolute beast. It was built back in the 1920s, and it had this weird design where all its massive guns were crammed up front. And these guns, they were nothing like what you'd find on the land. Each one of its 9 16-inch cannons fired a shell that weighed as much as a small car. These things didn't just explode, they literally changed the landscape.
So how did they solve that range problem? With this. It's so simple, it's brilliant. A crude industrial hack. The crew of the Rodney would intentionally flood the ballast tanks on one side of the ship. This would cause the entire battleship to list, to tilt over. That artificial tilt raised the elevation of the guns by just a few crucial degrees. It was a simple trick, but those few degrees added miles to their range, just enough to cross that 3-mile gap Meyer thought was his shield. But here's the thing, this wasn't some wild guess. Deep inside the Rodney was this thing called the Admiralty Fire Control Table, basically a room-sized analog computer. This mechanical marvel took the ship's new weird tilt, the wind speed, the air temperature, even the rotation of the Earth, and it calculated the perfect shot. It turned that crude hack into a weapon so precise it could drop a 1-ton shell into a tennis court from 20 miles away.
So, on the morning of July 8th, the assault begins. First, a wave of 450 heavy bombers comes over. It's terrifying for sure, but the bombs mostly miss Meyer's tanks, which are dug in and hardened. And as the dust settles, Meyer's confidence is soaring. His defense is held up. He thinks he's in control. He has no idea the real attack is just 60 seconds from impact.
Just imagine this journey for a second. On the Rodney, the guns let out this incredible roar. But on the ground, 15 miles away, total silence. The shells are moving faster than the sound they're making. They soar up into the stratosphere, hanging for just a moment in the freezing thin air. And then gravity takes over, and they start their final, silent plunge toward Earth at twice the speed of sound.
For the soldiers down there was just no warning. None. Not the familiar whistle of incoming artillery you might expect. One moment, a guy is opening a can of rations. The next, his world just stops existing. It's a terrifyingly impersonal way to fight a war. When the first shells hit, the effect was apocalyptic. I mean, the ground didn't just shake. Observers said it liquefied and rippled like water. The blast wave itself became a weapon, turning the air into a concussive force that could kill you without leaving a single mark. Meyer ran to a window, expecting to see a line of enemy tanks. He saw nothing.
He just saw the Earth itself erupting into the sky.
The blast wave was so powerful that it picked up a 45-ton Panther tank, one of the most feared weapons of the entire war, and just flipped it onto its back like a child's toy. The very symbol of German armor power, completely helpless against an enemy it couldn't see and a force it couldn't comprehend.
And in that moment, in the middle of all that chaos and destruction, surrounded by craters and twisted metal, the tactical genius Kurt Meyer has a sudden, profound realization. This wasn't a battle he was losing. This was an economic war.
Let's look at the brutal arithmetic he was suddenly facing. His Panther tanks were these incredible masterpieces of engineering, taking 6 months to hand build. The shell that just destroyed one, it was mass-produced in about 6 hours. The Allies were just deleting his most expensive assets with cheap explosives. He was trading diamonds for stones, and he was quickly running out of diamonds.
And this production chart tells the whole story. Germany, on a good month, might produce 200 Panther tanks. The US alone was churning out 4,000 Sherman tanks a month. Yeah, a Sherman was no match for a Panther one-on-one, but it was never one-on-one. It was 5 Shermans, or 10, or a 1-ton battleship shell from an enemy you couldn't even see.
In that moment, Meyer finally understood a lesson that's often attributed to Stalin. Quantity has a quality all its own. The sheer industrial power of the Allies wasn't just a factor in the war, it was the entire game. Germany's obsession with quality and perfection just could not compete.
Years later, when he was in a prisoner of war camp, Meyer asked an American officer about the bombardment that completely wiped out his division. The officer just shrugged and said this to him. And that line apparently haunted Meyer for the rest of his life. His elite soldiers, his superior tanks, his tactical genius, all of it was just reduced to a grid reference for a machine to solve. And that really leaves us with this final thought, doesn't it? Kurt Meyer was convinced the courage and the superior skill of his men would win the day. But on July 8, 1944, he learned that courage can't stop a 1-ton shell, and brilliant tactics can't defeat the cold, hard math of industrial warfare. It really makes you wonder, what truly tips the scales in a conflict?